My Lords, I rise strongly to speak for Amendments 346 DD and DE in the name of my noble friend, Lord Roborough. In the 2 years since your Lordship's House last considered nutrient neutrality, Lord Roborough's amendments seek to break the nutrient neutrality deadlock and delayer this cat's cradle of conflicting regulations and then allow us to focus on those things for best effort. Look, 3.5 years ago, in 2022, nutrient neutrality rules were created, and at a stroke, they hunky-bunkered about over 200,000 planning applications in over 75 planning authorities. The planning authorities which, for the most part, have the greatest housing potential because they're the ones clustered around the conurbations and thus have the greatest capacity to deliver housing growth. Now, I was the council leader in one of these areas, and at a stroke, together with our two neighbouring authorities, over 45,000 houses in a plan was made mute. And we'll never get roofs over people's head, including affordable and social housing, while homes aren't built. But I think we need to, and the Noble Lord's amendment gets to the heart of this. It allows us to ask the fundamental question as to whether stopping house building is going to clean up our rivers. And at the outset, let's be clear. The statutory responsibility for ensuring the clean environment it falls variously upon DEFRA, the Environment Agency, Natural England, the statutory water undertakings for the effective running of sewage treatment works. These bodies have the funding, the powers and the responsibility for cleaning up our rivers. But the nutrient neutrality rulings transfer those responsibilities to a completely different class of organisation, with no obvious statutory or financial resources to do so. Local councillors, the planning departments of local planning authorities, and the house building industry more generally. It's a buck passing from those who should be designing and implementing solutions over to in favour of the LPAs and builders who don't have any control over the matter at all. Now, taking all the homes in the UK, the Home Builders Federation estimates that of all the current planning applications that would be built, it would add just 0.92% to the overall housing stock of 25 million dwellings. So we've got to consider materiality here. And at this point, I feel I should declare that when I wasn't leading a council in a previous life, my business is in the fertiliser industry. I've got a degree in agriculture, I studied soil science, I've built a career around advising the effective plant nutrition and the role of nutrients in soils. My Lord, if I was on Mastermind, this would be my specialist subject. And so as I reflect on my own experience, it's now widely understood that the nutrient effect of the impact of new homes over and above the existing homes in rural places like Norfolk or Herefordshire might contribute just 0.2% of the total phosphate load in a catchment. Put another way, out of 500 potential mitigating strategies, 499 are more likely to reduce phosphate emissions in a catchment than preventing new homes from being built. In essence, not building a handful of homes in Halverston connected to a Clargister will not clean up Rockland Broad, to a very local example. And it's important to restate why the restrictions have been imposed. The test in the Habitats regulations and law is to avoid significant damage to a special area of conservation. Significant damage, not purely harm. And I will never understand why we have stopped our second largest economic sector, construction, and placed tens of thousands of people out of work, while serially missing our house building targets on the altar of nutrient neutrality, a marginal future gain of just 0.2%, when the problem exists here and now. We are aiming at the wrong target by stopping house building. Just ask the people of the Hereford catchment in the River Wye whether building a few less homes is going to clean up their river, or whether the wholesale processing and removing of animal wastes from the catchment might be a better approach. Because there, it's generally accepted that 80% of the nutrient load in places like Herefordshire comes from poultry manures, not from industry, or even the existing homes. Still less homes that haven't been built yet. Now, elsewhere, in your Lordship's House, the Environment and Climate Change Committee recently heard that over 20 million tonnes of sludges, slurries and digestates are applied to land from anaerobic digesters, and most of it, or some of it rather, on valley sides. I would venture to say that the government would be better advised to focus at this issue rather than stopping builders building. In essence, there's a dilemma. Do we focus on the 80% or the 0.2%? So that's why I like the Honourable Lord's amendment, because what it does is enable us to focus our mind where the substantive problem is. It directs ourselves not at the big numbers, not the trivial numbers. It stops us worrying about that 0.2% that might come from the building of new homes, from the flushing of their loos and so forth, and damaging a significant contributor to the local economies and supply chains. And instead it allows a regulatory focus on where the real problem lays, which is principally from organic manures, digestates applied to land on bare stubbles, and whose nutrients become mobilised much later in the summer and after harvest when the ground has warmed up, and the summer rains produce the ideal conditions to break them down into mobile phosphates, just not at the time when the growing crops are there to absorb them, so they run off. And if we now focus on some of the bigger issues rather than the marginal ones, it might allow us as a whole government or part of the governance family to have a joined-up approach. We might even start to provide the grants back for slurries lagoons and storage, which is the key to handling the problem, yet which were cancelled previous year. Look, I think the key thing is the best chance of breaking this deadlock and getting new homes built, and quickly, as the Noble Lord has said, is to really take that rapier to part 3 of the bill and work out how can we solve the problem rather than misdirecting ourselves on really quite small gains, small harms, with the big consequences that are harming our economy, harming our ability to grow, and actually getting roofs over people's heads, the people who need those homes, who aren't just rich people. They're affordable housing, they're housing in villages, they're housing on brownfield land. All this is hunky-bunkered, and we've got to sweep it away and focus on the big target, not the little one.